Welcome to Sports Talk with Steve Jones, the daily talk show with the voice of Penn State football and men's basketball. You never know what special guest may stop on by any given day. Now here's the man of the hour, Mr. Steve Jones.
Great to have you with us. Camp opened yesterday for Penn State football. I think people now know about Jamel Lyons and Kavion Keys not being present yesterday. James Franklin will expound more on, well, I don't know how much he's going to expound on it more, but he'll talk about it and be asked about it on Saturday when they have media day. But look, they're off and rolling. They'll go today. They have tomorrow off. And then next week, I think Wednesday's the off day. You're asking, geez, 2 days are going to, right, they're off? When you do this, you have to remember they're still in class. So when you're still in class, you have to have an off day. It's mandated. So they're in class. Tomorrow's the off day. They're in class. Wednesday will be the off day. All right. Now, in that week between semesters, it's a little bit more than a week, but now you can have more leeway at that point as to how you want to do it. Now you don't want to practice them every day, for goodness sakes. You've got to have some time off here and there. But if you're wondering why they go yesterday, today, and then off tomorrow, and then come back and go Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, then off Wednesday, and that's because you have to have a day off. When they're in class, you have to do that. But they're off and rolling. Look, it's a deep football team. Depth is going to be tested. The two players not being there does test the depth at defensive end and at linebacker, no question. And you move from there. I'm not going to get into anything more about that. That's up to James to do, and he will do that on Saturday at Media Day. I don't think he'll offer much more than the fact that they aren't there. He'll probably be asked a couple of questions, including follow-ups. But, that's where it stands. And we're 30 days away from seeing Penn State play the opener against West Virginia in Morgantown in what should be a wild atmosphere.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Last time I saw an atmosphere like that, it was actually that party you had on your deck.
I'll tell you what. At least there were no intentional arson attempts or any of that, as far as I know. Unless I left before it happened.
Just the worst.
All kidding aside, I think it helps Penn State a lot. Now, granted, it doesn't matter what time you play the game, but I think, to me, for the fans' perspective, having that game at noon helps a lot. I don't
want them out there waiting all day.
Well, that too.
Right?
First game.
Enjoying refreshing beverages.
That too.
Okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
All day. It doesn't mean they're going to be enjoying refreshing beverages between 8 a.m. and 10.
Very well might be, and they'll be there Friday night, I'm sure, too.
Right?
But, I think it helps.
I don't want them out there enjoying refreshing beverages for hours and hours as opposed to maybe a couple hours.
Yes. Yeah, I think this is a game where Big Noon helps. I think that's absolutely a spot where you really didn't want this game in prime time just because of all of what you just stated.
They're good.
Yeah, they are.
Look, Green, the quarterback, is good, and he's a tough player. Donaldson, the running back, and then the young player, who's White, who's very quick. It's a nice 1-2 punch at running back. They got 4 of those offensive linemen back. The only one missing is with the Pittsburgh Steelers now. That's Zach Frazier, the center. They have question marks at wide receiver themselves. They have question marks in a couple spots on defense. And we'll see. And I know everybody wants to play everything out until you get to Ohio State, but, a football team can't do that. So, the key for them is to go out and win today. Make themselves a better team today. And that's got to be the goal every day you go out there. I mean, it sounds cliche-ish. It sounds like coach speaking the whole thing, but it's real. That's real.
Absolutely.
When you're going through it, it's real. Officially today, Oregon, Washington,
there it is.
USC, and UCLA are now, as of today, officially in the Big Ten Conference. It's weird to say that after they went through media day and they were all there last week, but they are officially in as of today. Yesterday at midnight, the Pac-12 TV contract expired. With it expired the grant of rights, and thus the nice, clean, and easy move into the Big Ten by Oregon, Washington, USC, and UCLA. Which then brings us to Puddles the Duck. I'm sure many of you have seen the picture of the gigantic inflatable duck floating on the river in Indianapolis, right? Right? Boy, did you hear what they did at Nebraska?
I did not hear that part.
Matt Rule had media day at Nebraska, and the duck showed up, the mascot. And evidently, and of course, the duck doesn't talk, in an animated way, was trying to ask questions. Nebraska threw the duck out.
No fun. No fun.
No, to be honest with you.
I didn't know Tommy Lasorda managed Nebraska.
To be honest with you, I gotta admit it's fun.
I think so too. They're not doing. They're not. It's not. Yeah.
There's so much serious stuff in sports. Obviously, in what Jack and I do and what Dick and I do, it's serious business. And why do you think I'm at as many practices as I'm at for football and basketball? And I've been going to basketball practices all summer. In fact, I gave Venkat Ben Batuti a really nice rundown on basketball practice this morning when I saw him. But I've been going, why do I go? Because it's serious business. The day you miss something is the day something happens that you should know about as the broadcaster.
Sure.
So you go every day because it is serious business. But sports is also meant to be fun for the fan and for anybody around it. It's meant to be fun. Beaver Stadium's fun. All the little touches they've added to it, whether it's the blue band doing the pregame routine, which I think they've done that routine since 1965. So the pregame routine, and then the fireworks as the band sets up an entrance for them, and they get out there. It's fun, and the games are fun. So it's okay for the duck to float down the river, and it's okay for the duck to show up at the Nebraska press conference. It's just fun. And I got to admit, I give Oregon credit. They obviously have embraced being the newest member of the Big Ten. They've embraced it. They're also really good. Dan Lanning has a really good team. I mean, they're really good. Now, the question will be whether they bring the duck back for Big Ten basketball media day. By the way, they have announced what they're doing with the Big Ten basketball tournaments. The men's tournament will go to Indianapolis next spring, which we'd already told you about. We told you about that in March. They'd never announced it, but we told you about it in March because I didn't think it was a trade secret. Then it will go to Chicago and the United Center the year after that. Then it goes back to Indianapolis in 27. So 25 Indianapolis, 26 Chicago, 27 Indianapolis, and 2028 it goes to Las Vegas. And when we were talking about the Big Ten tournament earlier this year, we said Las Vegas had to be in the rotation somewhere. On the women's side, I believe it goes Indianapolis, Las Vegas, Indianapolis, and then Detroit. So they'll go to Indianapolis in 25. They'll go to Las Vegas in 26, Indianapolis in 27, in Detroit, Little Caesars Arena in 28. Did I tell you about the phone call I got on a talk show? On a talk show. This is what, 2 years ago? 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Guy calls me up and says, I have a question for Steve. Sure. Why are the NCAA wrestling championships going to an arena that's associated with gambling? I said, what? So what are you talking about? He says, Detroit, Little Caesars Arena. He says, Caesar's Palace. I said, no.
What?
I'm not kidding. Yeah. I said, no. I said, that's Little Caesar's Pizza. Mike Ilitch, who's also the owner of the Detroit Tigers, right, owns the Detroit Red Wings. I said, it's Little Caesar's Pizza. You know, the little guy there says pizza, pizza.
I can't believe he's not saying it.
Right.
He or she.
Well, number one, we don't have a Little Caesar's Pizza here anymore.
No.
Right.
But I think it is a national chain.
It is a national chain, but it's actually, I thought it was pretty good pizza.
For the price, too, especially. Absolutely.
No, sure, $5?
Yeah, great.
Oh, it's great. $5.
Great.
Not only that, good pizza.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, he says, I feel so. I said, don't be.
I've heard dumber questions, believe me.
No. And he says, I can't believe it. I said, no. I said, it's okay. I said, that's why you called the show. Did you get an answer? Yes. I said, that means now you know. He goes, okay, all right. Because, again, I don't worry about questions. Ever. You know, and somebody asks a question, that's fine. They're asking a question. Okay? It's the ones that make statements. You're like going, okay, here we go. It's a statement. Here, you want to switch places? You want to be up here? Since you know so much more than I do and everybody else in the audience, why don't you stand up here and you answer the questions? I think every time it's like, anytime it starts with I think, I'm going, oh God, I think it's time for me to leave. I think, oh geez. Or when you're out speaking and they want to videotape you. And I say, guys, hey, hold on. I said, you can't videotape it. I said, if you videotape it, I said, this is going to be the most plain vanilla talk you've heard in a long time. I said, all these good people paid to see it. I said, why should it be put out there for people who didn't pay? You know? So, I'm trying to think what I have left on that. I've got left, I go to a charity event in Sealands Grove next Wednesday. Then, I'm trying to think. Oh, and I go to Harrisburg on the 14th, which is a Wednesday. And then I go to Pittsburgh, and Jack and I are doing that event together in Pittsburgh on the 27th. So, yeah. So there you go. But they're in. Puddles the duck, man.
Love it.
Hey, but look,
I thought it was funny. I really did.
It's meant to be fun.
I thought it was.
It's not meant to be serious.
Yeah, I thought it was fun.
It's meant to be fun.
Yeah.
It's okay to laugh and have fun.
Yeah. And especially, there are certain mascots that just, in college football, and number one, it's what makes it fun. It's a lot of what makes it fun, especially nowadays. You know, a lot of things that made college sports more serious, without a doubt.
Well, I mean, look, money has made it more serious.
Yeah. Without saying that word, that's absolutely.
No, I'll say it out loud.
No doubt.
Money has. And money has made it more serious, not just because of TV contracts, NIL, things like that. It's also become more serious because of the gambling aspect.
Absolutely, 100%.
Right?
It's become a business.
I mean, and like, there's no money involved here, but it's a gamble every time I go on the show with you.
That's right.
So,
but there are mascots that are unmistakable in the sport of college football, and I think there's Nittany Lion obviously is one of them. But the duck is obviously another big one, and it's fun. It's not. This is not meant to be. It's it's not a get off my lawn moment. It literally is just it's meant to be fun. I think, first of all, the business aspect of it, Oregon is an incredible addition to the Big Ten. I think they have a chance to win the Big Ten this year in their first year. They're going to be a great team.
No, they have a chance to be excellent.
Yeah,
they'll be a factor as well in the basketball race.
Sure.
But that's like I think that they're not only a factor, but again, I think it's fun that they're in. And here's the next part of it. The next part of it is when Penn State finally does go to Oregon, I already know one of the stops I'm making. I'm going over to Animal House. I want to go see the place.
Not going to Beaverton and visiting Phil Knight and
No
Nike?
need. That's fine. No. I want to go see Animal House. I mean, I don't care if we just drive by and go, okay, yeah, there it is. All right. Because that's where they filmed it. Right? They were rejected. They called so many universities out on the West Coast trying to get them to do this. And no, we don't want to be associated with nope. And Oregon's like, yeah, come on in. Here's the other part that's interesting about them. That stadium's only 50 to 55,000 seats.
Yeah.
You just get the feeling, especially being in the Big Ten, that, man, if they had a 70, 75,000 seat stadium, that would be, they could get that thing filled up with 20,000 extra seats. But it doesn't seem like they're anxious to do it. And, of course, as you know, I've talked about downsizing some stadiums across the country because I think that's a pattern that we've been seeing. Because, let's face it, I mean, that the flat screen HD TV is a pretty powerful deal. Yeah. But if they, that's one program, if they expanded, they'd fill it. Did you see the women's 1,500 meter freestyle yesterday?
I did.
Katie Ledecky.
Mm-hmm.
This is, first of all, it's amazing. Let's start with that. I believe she has the top 20 times in the history of the event. There's only one thing I can equate it to that I can think of. It was the human equivalent yesterday of Secretariat in the Belmont Stakes. They had to widen the camera to show where the other competitors were. There were only 3 other swimmers. In fact, not 3, maybe 2. 3 other swimmers that were on the same finishing lap she was on. And they had just made the turn. The other ones were still swimming. She's swimming this way, and you got people swimming that way. She was so far in front. So far in front. She won by 10 seconds.
Yeah.
10 seconds. Again, it's the human equivalent of Secretary in the Belmont Stakes. Like Ron Turcotte looking back, where are they? Right? I mean, Katie could have stopped at one point, looked back, where are they? Okay, and kept swimming and still won. So she has a gold and a bronze along the way. In fact, so far we've been excellent at finishing third. We lead the world in bronze medals. I mean, when it comes to finishing third, the U.S. is just really, very impressive.
Nothing needs to beat when this is telling our age with this one, but you go back to a certain fast food restaurant in the 80s. I think it was 84. When the USA wins, you win, where we'd have, they won a gold, you want a you want a bronze. That was when they boycotted Moscow. Moscow, of course, boycotted. So right. They gave away more sandwiches during that promotion.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think they led the league in giveaways that year, courtesy of the.
God.
I remember that promotion back in the mid '80s.
And then Leon Marchand from is it the University of Arizona? I believe it is. Because he has Michael Phelps coach.
Right. Yep.
All right. And he's now won 3 gold medals at the games. And, of course, he's from France. Yeah. And, I mean, they're the host country. To see something like this happen in their pool is just tremendous.
Just historically, too, as you just said. I mean, you just said the biggest name of arguably the greatest Olympian of all time, and then Michael Phelps. And then you have, obviously what Marshawn's done. Yeah, just the history of this sport with everything that it has been associated with the Summer Olympics. Obviously the focus in the recent years has been gymnastics. There's no question about that, and obviously the basketball team. But what has been done in swimming in the history of the Olympics just continues to grow and grow. You don't forget what Mark Spitz did, but his records, what people thought would stand forever, have been shattered.
Right. I will say this, though. What is interesting is that this Olympics, and look, there's only so far you can push times. I've got that. There's only so far you can push scores in gymnastics. I got that. There's only so far. And we don't know what the limit is. But this has been an Olympiad with few, if any, world records. Ledecky's time was her 8th best yesterday, as an example. Look, it's good enough to win. Who cares? But I guess they're saying that the pool and the water in it, and they did not get it from the River Seine. Okay. Is not conducive to record times. Now, there have been Olympic records set. There have been Olympic records set. But there have been very few, if any, world records set during the course of this. Now, we'll find out on the track when they finally get going this weekend if that's the case. But in everything else so far, there have been some Olympic records, obviously gold, silver, and, of course, the U.S. leading the world in bronze. Hey, they have more medals than anybody. Yeah, okay. I'd like to have let's shift the bronze number over to gold. That would be great. But that's what I've found to be interesting. It's and again, there's only so far you can push things. I don't know. You're trying to find a 10th here, a 100th there. But that's been interesting, which does beg the question about the pool itself, about other events, but also at the same time, have we reached a limit in many sports as to actually how far you can push times? Have you reached a limit as to how far, for example, in women's and men's gymnastics, you can push scores? At some point you have to reach the limit.
Absolutely.
At some point you have to, or it's just physically impossible to go past that. Roger Bannister breaks the 4-minute mile. Jim Ryan, as a high schooler, breaks the U.S. record in the mile. Well, now when they run the mile, they're 20 seconds faster than that. Yeah, we'll find out moving forward to see whether that holds up in this Olympiad or not. The Yankees just swept the Phillies, so now they're going to win the whole thing based on their fan base.
That's right.
I don't know if the fan base has actually looked at their roster, but that's all right. It's an interesting group. Yankee fans, interesting group. We're the greatest. We're this, that. You haven't even been to the World Series in 15 years. Come on. Let's pretend you're getting so close. Don't you have to be there to have a shot at it?
Well, Well, they felt like, you take 2 or 3 from the Red Sox, you go 5-1 on this road trip. This is the complete rejuvenation they needed.
I will say this, though. The Saturday game against the Red Sox, when they were on the verge of losing several times in that game, and then they and they won.
Yep. I thought yesterday, too, with the way the bullpen played.
That was one of those, like, okay, interesting. Now, Jazz Chisholm is off to a good start with them, but to be honest with you, he's a good player. He's not a great player.
I agree. I think he's somebody that's going to help. I think good player that's going to be productive.
He helps them without question.
Yeah.
All right? He helps
Yeah, he's
them.
not one of the guys I consider the best in the game. No, absolutely not.
But he is also a good player.
Yes.
He's going to hit some spots, or it's going to be like, okay.
Sure.
And, there were no earth-shattering moves, by the way, made during this trade deadline.
No, I thought
there were moves that helped people.
Yeah, I think so.
But nothing where you sat back and went, "Who?" Because the Blue Jays, they dealt Kiermaier and and so forth. But they kept Guerrero.
Bichette.
They kept Bichette. They kept Gosman.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think from a fresh start perspective, I think the Orioles picking up Jimenez, I thought was a good pickup.
It's a good pickup.
Yeah, I think Jimenez is a good player. I think you lose everything in Chicago when you play for the White Sox at this point.
I think Austin Hayes is a good pickup.
I think
the Phillies.
The Phillies did well. I agree.
Yeah,
Thought they got good bullpen help too.
No question.
They didn't necessarily have to do.
Yeah, Estevez will help them. I think because look, he has to do something for them because Sir Anthony Dominguez went in the trade to Baltimore.
Yep.
But, yeah.
I think the Phillies, and those who are slumping for the Phillies right now will turn it around. And history has told us that.
Oh yeah,
I don't think there's any question. Bryce Harper's not going 1 for his next 30. I don't believe.
No. I'm going to assume that Jonathan Owens is being told he's in camp, right?
I would think so.
I think he's in training camp.
Yeah.
I don't know if maybe they let him go for. Did they let him go for a little bit over to Paris or not?
That I don't know.
Probably not. He's with the Bears now. He's with Green Bay last year. He's with the Bears. And for those, I'm sorry, for those who don't, for the uninitiated, that's Simone Biles' husband. That's going to be. He's a good player, by the way. Jonathan Owens is he a great player? No, but he's a good player.
A good player.
And the U.S. Olympic basketball team, men's team, won easily over South Sudan. And this time, Joel Embiid sat the entire game. And Jason Tatum started.
Yep.
Hey, when you have a team like this, that is the tricky part. Now, we all know that Embiid has received criticism. Look, Okay. Hear me out. This is not going to be, as you know, I don't sit here and talk politics. Right. I don't talk politics.
No, nor do I.
All right. But I will say this. If you're going to have a legalized immigration system, right? Which means there's a process you have to go through to get there. And he went through the process. He's an American citizen now because he went through the process. It should be celebrated,
right?
Not criticized. He shouldn't be playing for the U.S. Yes, he is. He's an American. I'll never forget Wilson Alvarez when he was here as the pitching coach for the Spikes. Wilson Alvarez, his wife, his children are Americans. Right? He married a woman from the United States. They had children. So he said, look, he wanted to become an American citizen. And what we did, all of us, took turns. And now I took my turn on a road trip to Vermont with him, asking him questions from the test so he could be prepared to take the test. We all took turns. Why? Because we wanted him to be an American citizen. That's why. This is something he wanted. Great guy. We're like, good. Yeah, sure, he threw a no-hitter in the major leagues and the whole thing. Yeah. But we all
at that game to Baltimore.
Right, but we all wanted it for him. So all of us, myself, Joe Putnam, right, the other coaches, some of the players, part of the Spike staff, everybody took turns every other day asking him questions so he was ready for the test. And he went down, I think he took the test in Florida, I think. And he left the team just for a short period of time, passed, was sworn in, then came back and rejoined the team. We were all thrilled for him. Now, we all know where he grew up, and we respect that. But he wanted to be an American. So to us, he's an American. Joel Embiid is an American. He went through the process. We all know he's born someplace else. It's fine.
Uh-huh.
But he also realizes what country gave him the opportunities that he has afforded in life. Right?
Sure.
And now, so all this stuff about, he shouldn't be playing for the United States, you darn well are right he should be playing for the United States. That's his option, his choice. He is an American citizen. So let's celebrate that. Let's celebrate somebody who decided that they wanted to do it and went through the process of doing it. Anybody who ever goes through the process and passes and becomes an American citizen should be celebrated, because that's how badly they want it. They want it that bad. They want it that bad.
Yeah. Well, the other part of it, you go back to...
But he's been getting criticism for, he shouldn't be. What are you talking about? He's an American.
Yeah, I agree entirely. And I go back to the 90s, where the person who I think, in my opinion, is the greatest center I ever saw play the game, Hakeem Olajuwon's in the same boat. Nigerian born, ended up playing for the U.S., was able to play for the U.S. in 1996.
Wilt was better.
I never saw Wilt.
I did.
I never saw Wilt. That's the greatest that I ever saw, to me, was Olajuwon.
And Bill Russell would have handled him.
Yeah, I agree. I think Russell, I think Kareem probably would have handled him. But I never saw either one of them.
Look, we're parsing stuff here. I'm just having
Absolutely.
fun with it. He's one of the top 10 centers in the history of the game.
His footwork, to me, I think you're right.
Well, remember, he was a goalkeeper.
Both.
He was a goalkeeper in soccer.
Yeah, he was. And his footwork was as good to me as anybody I've ever seen play the game. I saw Shaq in his prime. I saw Shaq completely through his entire career from LSU on. I think he's one of the most dominant centers to ever play the game. They changed the rules because of him. But if we're talking about talent on the court, the ability to score and beat you in so many different ways, I think, to me, what I saw, and I agree with you, I think if I would have saw Wilt and Russell and Kareem in his heyday, I think I probably would be disagreeing right now. But to me, the one that I saw from the 80s on was Olajuwon.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Ewing's not far behind him. I think Patrick Ewing is a guy that doesn't necessarily get the credit he deserves because he was injured towards the end of his career, which I think hurt him. Yeah. But he took the biggest town in America and embraced the media and really didn't necessarily have the help you need to get to the finals, and he got there. Yeah. So I think Ewing's another guy that, to me, is in the conversation. I'm not putting him on the same level as Olajuwon. But I think Ewing was a great center.
Yeah. So, but it's...
point is, Olajuwon played for the U.S. in 96.
Right. But that's what bothered me. Like, he's been criticized. Oh, what's he playing for the... What do you want him to play for? Yeah, right?
Exactly. He's in the home country of where they wanted him to play. And that's half the problem.
I understand that. But they can boo him all they want. He's an American.
Absolutely. He's an American citizen.
Hey, he's an American by choice.
Sure. Yeah, did it legally.
You know? So, oh well.
He's the type of player where if he doesn't play for your team, you're not a fan of him. I think there's so many of those guys in sports where it does happen. You know, look, you weren't a Patriots fan, you probably weren't a Brady fan. You probably don't like Kelsey or Mahomes either if you're not a Chiefs fan. But and Embiid, I think, is the same way. Has he won championships? No, but I think to me, unless you are,
has he gotten past the second round?
Has he showed up in the playoffs? No.
Has he gotten past the second round?
No. Has he shown up in the playoffs? Not really either. But I think for
the Aaron Judge of basketball.
Don't
Aaron Judge. Excuse me. Have you watched the postseason games?
Yeah.
There's a lot of strikeouts.
But point being, he's one of those guys where if he does not play for your team, you are not a fan of him, and you embrace the chance to boom if you can.
Right. Well, I mean, again, it's they should love Wembanyama and move on from there.
They should absolutely be loving Wembanyama. I think he's a big part of this future of the league, without question. I thought he matured a lot already, and he's only a rookie. He's going into his second year.
Yeah, he's a good player.
Very good player.
I think they've got a better team around him.
I agree. I thought their draft was good too. I think you get a veteran in Castle. I think is going to be pretty good. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll see what they do with. I think Trey Jones is still there. I think we'll see what they do with him. I think he's a good point guard. I think he's an underrated point guard.
But Wembanyama is
yeah, and Gobert's France too. Yeah, they're a good team without him.
No, I mean they're good. Did you see what what the Canadian? First of all, the U.S. men's team is in the quarters in soccer.
There it is.
Beat Guinea.
They're winning.
0.
Hey, win's a win.
But how about the Canadian women's Olympic team? You know about the drones. Okay. So, and so they had 6 points deducted from them? And they still made the quarterfinals. Okay. They still made it. Now here's this one. The NFL is going to mandate all head coaches to do in-game interviews with sideline reporters starting this season. They say it's what the fans want. Which fans?
Yeah.
Which fans? Excuse me. Which fans are like, I want more coaching?
Awful.
What the heck are they talking about?
The NFL has not helped themselves this week at all.
No.
Between this and the onside kick
rule,
which is the most
make no
idiotic
sense.
thing I have ever heard in my life.
Part of strategy.
Yeah. Part of what makes the game fun, absolutely. Bill Cowher's onside kick in the Super Bowl, Sean Payton's onside kick in the Super Bowl. That's fun. Yeah. You're taking fun away.
Hey, what are you doing here?
It's terrible.
When Sean Payton opened up the second half for the Saints against the Colts in the Super Bowl with an onside kick, you went, whoa!
Absolutely. Bill Cowher got the Steelers back in Super Bowl 30 with the onside kick.
It's like, you do it because they're surprised.
Yes.
We're going to kick one onside now.
Unbelievable.
Okay, got it.
That's just absolutely
what are
idiotic.
We doing here?
It's just I don't understand it. It comes back to the point where I just feel like in the NFL's mind, and look, more money than ever they're making, ratings are where they want it to be. Still, they have that feeling of invincibility that they can do anything they want and it's not going to matter. There's going to reach a point where it's going to matter.
Look, and then the interview with the coaches.
Yeah.
You want to talk about getting nothing out of a segment.
Yeah, which you're not going to get.
Nothing.
You're absolutely not going to get
nothing out of a segment. Let's go downstairs and let's find out.
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, as you know, I have defended Mike Tomlin a lot because I think he's a heck of a coach.
I think he's a heck of a coach.
I really do. But when he does interviews on the sideline, Mike talks, but Mike doesn't say anything because Mike deliberately doesn't want to say anything. It's not because Mike doesn't have anything to say. Mike's a highly intelligent guy. All right? and articulate, well-spoken, but at the same time, he also knows that he's not going to give you any insight into what's going on at the farm. Okay, no. He's not going to do it, and there's with good reason.
Right.
Most people don't. But the in-game interview thing with coaches. Now, are there a couple of coaches that are like, holy mackerel, like really good at them? Mike McDaniels, he's good.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, he does a good job.
Yeah, he sure does.
On that. But for example, but most of the other ones, your guy Kyle Shanahan, come on.
He's honest.
I mean, it's like,
I don't think you're going to want his honesty on the TV. Bill Belichick's saying, "Hey, I got fired at the right time." You really think Bill Belichick would have wanted to do any of this?
Belichick's going to want to try and come back with somebody next year because he's close enough to Don Shula's record.
Yeah. And you talk about
he can do it.
Talk about Shanahan. I mean, Bill Belichick could have been the 49ers defensive coordinator had he wanted to be a coordinator. He doesn't. He wants to be a coach, head coach.
Well, hey, that's what he does.
Yeah, absolutely.
But this in-game interview, for example, Greg Popovich. Let's talk about Greg Popovich.
Yeah.
All right, and of course he had the legendary with the late Craig Sager.
Absolutely.
Right. But anybody who knows Greg Popovich, and I've never met him, but I have mutual friends that know him. Okay, so I don't know him, but we have mutual friends. Say he is one of the nicest, funniest guys out there. Stories, kids around, the whole thing. You never know it. When it comes to doing the interview, he thinks it's a pile of junk.
Yeah.
That he has to do it, so he treats it that way.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. Now, when Sager had cancer, and they had Sager's son do the interview, you saw the emotion in Popovich come out. And then when Craig came back, you saw the emotion in Popovich come out.
I think you saw emotion out of a lot of players. I think you saw
but Popovich was the one above all.
One that always, sure.
Yeah. He says, I don't like doing these things, but you know what? I'm going to do this one for you. Right? It does give people a negative idea of what a guy's like.
Sure.
And maybe the press conferences do as well. But the people I know that are my friends that know him because they're friends have told me, Steve, this guy's a terrific guy. You'd love to sit down and talk to him. Okay. All right. And, they're my friends, so I trust them. But when it comes to doing that, he didn't want to do it. He just wanted to coach. He just wants to coach basketball.
Yeah.
He wants to coach basketball. He doesn't feel like doing an interview and answering questions.
No.
Well, let's face it. Football coaches are like James is terrific at it.
Sure.
James is really good. When he's down the field with Brian, he gets 2 questions. He's already thinking about what he's going to talk about in the locker room, and he's telling us a lot of the same things that he's going to tell them downstairs. Once he gets into the locker room with them. But so he's really good at it. Most of the other ones are not really that great at it. No. It's just
a lot of them are.
Mike Krzyzewski, you notice Mike, for a long time when Mike was mandated to do it, you notice he had an assistant coach do it.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's talk with assistant coach Chris Collins. Right? Chris Collins would do the halftime interview. John Shire would do the halftime interview. Right? Steve Wojciechowski would do the halftime interview. Always. Finally, it got to the point where I think it was mandated that Mike had to do it, so he did. But Jay Wright, for example, Jay never did the post game. He never did the radio post game show. He always had an assistant do it. That's why when Pat Chambers came here, he did the same thing with his assistants. until finally it was mandated to him. He had to do the post-game show with us. And it's not like I didn't ask. I'm like, I'll talk to whomever's on there. I could really I'm not going to sit there and go, hey, where's that coach? Right? I don't mandate anything. But that's the way Jay always did it. Was, on the radio post-game show, the assistant coach is the one that did it.
Sure.
It's usually the person who had the scout on the game. But, every coach, but what do we get out of it? What do we get out of it? I mean, to be honest with you, like the NHL ones, Emily does a great job with that. Emily Kaplan, and she gets criticized for it. Emily gets criticized. Oh, what kind of questions are those? What? Because Emily doesn't take up 2 minutes with the question to prove to everybody she knows what she's talking about? It's one of the dumbest things that happens in interviewing over and over again. You don't need to impress the guest or the audience that you know what you're talking about.
No.
You're already sitting in that position. Just ask the questions.
Yeah.
The questions tell everybody you know what you're talking about, not the setup. All right. Now, sometimes you need to do a little setup so you're giving the interviewee some context as to what the question's about. So you want to give a little context. Hey, Ohio State was able to sign Caleb Downs. Get him to transfer from Alabama. You're talking to Phil Steele. Phil, what does that now mean to the overall scope of the secondary and the Ohio State defense, in your opinion? Just a little context, because he's a big ad for them, potentially. But how long was the question? 15 seconds?
Yeah.
Maybe?
Yeah.
The whole thing? And she gets criticized for short and to-the-point questions. A, she doesn't have a lot of time. And B, she's not messing around.
Not messing around, yeah. That's the biggest point of it.
Right.
Absolutely.
And that's, all right. Okay, I'll tell you the worst. Okay? And this is, again, not about politics. This is not about politics, please. But one of the worst I've heard, whether it's radio or TV, of interviewing people is Sean Hannity. Right? He spends this time delivering an opinion while the people are sitting there.
Yeah.
Just get to the questions. I thought you brought them on to talk to them so we could hear from them.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yep.
The whole point of interviewing somebody is that if you do a 15-minute interview with somebody, 10 to 12 minutes of the interview should be their answers.
Yeah, absolutely. And
right? Because you bring them in so people can hear what they think. What is their opinion? What's their knowledge of something that maybe we don't have? Right? Your question should take up 2 to 3 minutes total in a 15-minute interview. You should be saying virtually nothing and spending your time listening to the answers, because then at that point you may want to follow up on what they're saying. That's when you're doing an interview, that's the whole point. The whole point is that people need to hear what they have to say. Okay? In his case, and he's a brilliant communicator. His communication skills are great and so forth. But when he interviews people, just ask the questions.
Yeah. And
I don't, just ask. It's like that you sit back and go, now he probably ripped me up one side down the other, which I could care less. But he does a lot of things extremely well as a communicator. And this is no politics aside.
Right.
This has nothing to do with politics. I'm talking about him as a professional in this business. He's excellent at what he does in terms of his ability to articulate it, to be smooth, to never stumble, to never stammer, keeps going no matter what the situation, doesn't need a teleprompter to do it. He's great at all that. As an interviewer, no. That's the one that's an area where you sit back and go, no, that's like, I'd like to hear what that person has to say if you don't mind.
Yeah. And the criticism the mothership has taken over the years, for good reason, in a lot of ways. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's that 4-letter network Dan Patrick refers to him as. But
Dan Patrick, by the way, is an excellent interview.
Literally just about to say that.
Dan Patrick is an
literally
excellent
just
interviewer.
about to say that. Patrick is as good as it gets, and
because he just asks
somebody exactly. He goes straight into the point.
But he does a combination, though.
Yeah,
and this is what makes him
absolutely.
excellent. Part of what he does is he just gets to the point and asks questions. The other two is he turns it into a conversation while asking questions.
Absolutely. Without showing his own insight, which I think is the other big part. That's the one thing you talk about Dan Patrick. Bruce Gilbert used to be one of the VPs at ESPN, taught us years ago that stick to the who, what, where, when, why, hows because of that exact reason. Right. You're not providing your own insight. You're going straight to the point, into the question. And he's praised Dan Patrick for that, and that was the one big thing. But that's one of the things I learned from Bruce years ago when I first broke into the industry. Period, and it's something I've never forgotten because I think he's absolutely spot on about it.
Well, he's right about that because look, he's Dan Patrick. Don't you already assume he knows what he's talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, when people already assume that you know what you're talking about. That makes
credibility's established. That's one of the biggest things you have to do.
So you don't have to sit there.
It's already there.
You don't have to prove to the audience you know what you're talking about, and you don't have to prove to the person you're interviewing that you know what you're talking about. Just talk.
Yeah.
Interview.
Yep.
And Patrick's great at it.
Incredible. One of the best.
He's great at it.
One of the best.
I remember one time. Joe Paterno and I had a back and forth. It was good natured, believe me, about interviewers, and I was backing up Tim Russert. I had Tim Russert. I said, Joe, come on. I said, Russert's great at what he does. He goes, oh no, he had somebody else, all right? And he's talking about, Rose, who's on PBS. For a long time.
Charlie Rose.
Yeah. He's like, oh, no, he does this. And I said, I said, and Russell will use video clips, and he'll use newspaper clippings to get exact quotes and then ask the question. I said, he sets it up really well. No, Steve. It was one of those. But see, when Joe argued with you, it was part like your opinion, his opinion,
exactly.
But he wanted to see the conviction of your opinion. There are times where I can tell you,
Stan Savran quite a bit.
I could tell you, I could tell you right now.
I remember those.
There are times where like he absolutely agreed with you, but he wanted to see how you reacted. Absolutely, the conviction of your opinion happened to me, right? And then because when we were done with that, we were done. This was in his office. And we've just done a pregame show or something like that. Which a pregame show takes 6 minutes, right? And we're talking about interviewers, and because he said to me, he says, "Yeah, Steve, you always just sit down and just get right to the point." I said, "Yeah, well," I said, "I'm not here to waste your time."
There's some times where,
but then he said to me, he says, "You know what?" He says, "I like having these conversations." I said, "Yeah, no, I enjoy it too." He says. You don't back down. I said, no. I said, why should I? I said, by the way, your guy is pretty good. I just prefer mine more. It's just because that's,
when he knew you were right a couple times, the one thing I noticed with Joe, he wouldn't even let you get the full question in because he knew where you were going with it. I would go back to the Alabama game here. 3 timeouts in the first drive, literally. Yeah. And you say, Coach, 3 timeouts. There's no legit criticism. There's no excuse for that. He wouldn't even let you answer the question because he knew where you were going.
Well, part of that is that he was on the sideline thinking the same thing you were as it was happening.
No doubt about it.
You're right.
Not a doubt.
That's wrong with it.
Not a doubt.
Oh, God. But, yeah, that's Interesting topics today.
Yeah.
Including Puddles the duck.
That's right.
Right.
And it's all fun for crying out loud. Lighten up, Francis, is the old cliche. Come on, Matt Rule.
Well, you know
Pennsylvania guy, lighten up.
You
Come
know
on,
what?
Nebraska.
Puddles the duck. A welcome addition, in my opinion, to the Big Ten
agree.
Conference. As
100% agree.
officially today,
That's right.
Puddles today is officially a Big Ten mascot.